Opinion. Foreign lobbyists want India to give up digital competition bill. There is a concerted effort by foreign lobbying organizations to pressure India to abandon its digital competition bill. Lobbying is everywhere in the corridors of power, by think tanks both in India and abroad, industry association that house under the guise of startups but are actually working for foreign companies, and even think tanks and policy advocates have been roped into to force the government to give up most of the clauses of the Digital Competition Act. It is essential to understand the importance of this bill, which is expected to level the playing field not only between Indian and foreign digital companies but also enable the Indian manufacturing sector to survive the onslaught of Chinese imports. Digital is taking over the retail sector at a breakneck pace. Buyers are moving away from offline to digital. Malls and metros are already witnessing a stagnation in rentals or vacancies. The online digital market is expected to touch $325 billion by 2030 according to Deloitte, growing 2.5 times the offline retail market. Real estate consultancy firm Anaric is even more bullish. It says that digital retail will touch $550 billion by 2035 in a report titled Future of Retail. It estimates the overall online market will jump to $325 billion in 2030 from $70 billion in 2022. However, it will be larger than the organized retail market, which is projected to reach just $230 billion in 2030, doubling from a base of $110 billion in 2022. Organized retail is defined by companies such as Trent and Reliance Trends, which rent malls and sell through them. Lobbyists try to downplay this growth of digital by comparing it not to the organized retail, but to the total retail market, where the unorganized sector is much larger. These lobbyists keep saying that digital is so small that it does not matter. Why are we trying to curb its growth? Online retail is driven by technology, creating jobs that fuel further innovation. Not only is the size of the online retail market increasing at an exponential rate, but it is also becoming consolidated among just a few players. Mostly monopolies like Amazon and Walmart owned Flipkart. The government has attempted to curb the unethical practices of these monopolies, which include predatory pricing, capital dumping, seller discrimination, and masquerading as marketplaces when they are retail organizations. Unfortunately, existing laws under the Competition Commission of India have been inadequate in controlling such behaviors. Hence, the government has been working on the Digital Competition Bill for more than 3 years. The bill has been delayed due to the active lobbying by lobbyists from these monopoly companies, not just from the e-commerce space, but also foreign firms in search and social media. Lobbyists representing big tech and industry bodies such as the Internet and Mobile Association of India (IMAI) and the US India Business Council (USIB) have continuously raised objections to the bill and are especially concerned about its ex-ante regulatory approach. Their core argument is that India should avoid adopting an EU-style framework like the Digital Markets Act (DMA), and instead focus on strengthening its existing competition law through better enforcement. However, this opposition ignores India's interest as well as the fact that all these companies are following this very rule in the EU. It is as if they still want to treat India as a third world country where they can bully and beat their way into ignoring everything that is fair. Ex-ante regulation refers to a preemptive system of oversight. Rather than waiting for anti-competitive behavior to occur and then reacting, as is the case with ex-post regulation, ex-ante rules seek to prevent abuses before they can harm consumers or distort markets. The draft Digital Competition Bill (DCB) proposes to classify certain large digital firms as systemically significant digital enterprises (SSDEs), subjecting them to a set of obligations aimed at preventing monopolistic conduct. These include bans on self-preferencing, the misuse of non-public business data, and mandatory interoperability, along with requirements for transparency and user choice in defaults. Lobbyists write in the Economic Times of July 7, 2025 against the DCB, suggesting that India should avoid emulating Europe's stringent rules and instead focus on building up the enforcement capacity of its existing framework under the Competition Act. They caution that hardwired bans could penalize scale, discourage innovation, and stifle growth. This is the traditional argument given by all tech monopolists that scale will be affected. The question is whose scale it is. The scale of these monopoly platforms that is affected. Who loses? The whole economy of the country loses if these rules are not enacted. Jobs are lost, as consolidation of sellers leads to Chinese imports, which harms manufacturing. The loss of jobs in organized and unorganized retail has been well documented. In the long run, this leads to the hollowing out of the Indian economy, like it has happened in the US. EU regulators are therefore insisting on controls. Lobbyists even get vague surveys done to show that DCB will harm MSMEs and legacy media publishers without checking the accuracy of the sample size and its impact. If ex-ante regulations are not applied, these tech platforms have perfected the system of delaying any impact of regulations. They have been running circles around CCI by filing so many petitions in the court against every decision that no action can be taken against them. The action by CCI almost becomes irrelevant by the time it is implemented through the courts, which in India can take years. Moreover, the fine that is levied is so small and the profits that these platforms generate is so humongous that they are willing to pay the fine and continue doing what they were fined for. Another paper funded by Google and Amazon and written by the think tank Carnegie Endowment has a similar if more detailed take. The paper says that ex-ante regulation is not effective not only due to new rules but because it builds preventive capacity within regulators. This is particularly relevant in digital markets, where network effects and data lock-ins can lead to early entrenchment of power and create winner-takes-most scenarios well before any formal abuse is registered. The central reason why big tech and their affiliated lobbyists are pushing back against the Digital Competition Bill lies in how it threatens the core of their business models. Ex-ante rules would curtail their ability to self-preference their services, integrate user data across platforms, and push default settings that steer users toward their own offerings. These practices have been instrumental in consolidating their dominance. While they argue that such regulation would stifle innovation and increase compliance costs, what they are effectively defending is their capacity to extract advantage from scale, integration, and opacity. Below is a snapshot of the main concerns raised by the lobbyists and their implications for competition and consumers in India. What's often left unsaid in the lobbyist submissions is that global giants are already adapting to the DMA in Europe. The opposition to India adopting a similar path has less to do with the principle of regulation and more with maintaining the asymmetry of power in markets like India, where regulatory institutions are weaker and startup ecosystems are still maturing. For Indian digital businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, the current imbalance often manifests in opaque search rankings, exploitative commissions, and arbitrary changes to algorithmic visibility, all of which could be addressed through ex-ante mechanisms. Moreover, the claim that ex-ante rules will deter investment is not supported by global evidence. The DMA has not led to any large-scale disinvestment in Europe. Instead, it has encouraged many emerging firms to explore European markets because they now face a more level playing field. For India, a calibrated ex-ante approach could do the same: enhance competition, promote innovation from the bottom up, and ensure that market dominance does not translate into market abuse. The Digital Competition Bill attempts to do exactly that. By identifying SSDEs based on both quantitative and qualitative thresholds, it aims to target those enterprises whose control over user data, platform infrastructure, and market access creates systemic dependencies. What the lobbyists are asking India to do is to delay such a move in favor of a slower, case-by-case model that has already proven inadequate in addressing fast-moving harms. Their appeals to protect innovation and investment are, in effect, appeals to maintain dominance and avoid disruption. India would do well to reject these pleas and proceed with a well-designed ex-ante framework, not as a copy of the EU model, but as a sovereign assertion of its right to define fair competition in its own digital economy. Swipe left for next video. India has the opportunity to shape the next decade of global digital regulation, not as a passive recipient of Western frameworks but as a proactive leader crafting rules that protect its innovators, empower its consumers, and secure its economic sovereignty. The Digital Competition Bill, with its ex-ante core, is a step in precisely that direction. K. Yatish Rajawat is a public policy researcher and works at the Gurugram-based think tank Center for Innovation in Public Policy CIPP. Views expressed in the above piece are personal and solely those of the author. They do not necessarily reflect NEWS18's views. Latest blogs.